Hi, I'm Nicole,
And I'm Leah.
and welcome to the Author Narrator Sessions, where we bring you behind the scenes of the making of the Song of the King's Heart audiobooks. Today, we're going to talk about Egypt itself, modern Egypt, and visiting it. Have you been? Do you have any relationship to it? Would you like to go? If you went, where would you go? And also, why Egypt stays in our hearts. So many people are interested in ancient Egypt in particular, and why is that? What is it about that culture that is sort of like, thrilling to many people?
So for me, when we were putting this on social media, I just posted fun fact, because most people don't know, but my family is actually from Egypt. So I had a connection when I read the book. It wasn't just a job, but when I was reading it, this is part of my world. I've never been to Egypt. My father and his family came to America in the 50s.
Okay.
And it's a classic immigrant story that they came and when you go into their homes, at least for all of my upbringing, it's like another world in the house. English was spoken outside, but inside we spoke French and English because they were from Cairo.
Okay.
And so there were lots of family stories, family recipes, outfits, how they decorated the home, customs, etc. So I grew up with just having a thread of the conversation always about home, the homeland, and home was always where the heart is. But there, we would show pictures, etc. And even when I was growing up as a child, my father would come to school and share stories to my classmates with photos of what it was like. And it's a different world completely. And so I always grew up knowing that one day we would go, hopefully as a family. And unfortunately, we haven't done it. There were many reasons why, but that is a hope. And there's always a heartstring tug of saying one day we hope to return and just see. It will never be like how they grew up, but it would be interesting to see not only the pyramids and the Sphinx and other historical important places, but also a connection to home. Like, this is the street where my family lived on, things like that. So when I was reading the book, I already could paint it. Like, I didn't need history books. I already had images. I know what you're talking about. I know the images that you were describing, and from my reference. And there was a tie. And so there was a moment during COVID when we were recording this that there were some delays in getting things done because COVID had impacted the work time frame. But that was when I told you, I said, I really want I'm in this because my family's from Egypt. I want to do this. And at that point, you kind of said, oh, you have to finish this. And I just remember that. And so that's my tie. And when I was in school, I studied hieroglyphs. Like, I thought I was going to be an archaeologist because of this. I'm telling you, it was really important. So any book that features Egypt, I'm always going to love it. I'm on it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring up the archaeology thing, because I was thinking about how, like, every young archaeologist, like even my nephew went into archaeology, and I'm like, oh, you're going to go to the ancient Egyptian pyramids. He's like, no, I'm most likely going to be digging rocks, like in North Dakota, and I'm just like, oh, I mean, it's sort of, you just think of Indiana Jones and all of the early 1900 archaeologists that came to Egypt and discovered and pillaged, but discovered so much at that one time. It's sort of thrilling. It was a renaissance of ancient Egypt for sure, that had happened in the 1800s or 1700s with Napoleon and the archaeological digs that had happened then. And it sort of comes in shifts. And now there is a lot revealed every day new in Egypt. And that's pretty exciting also, because I keep up on that. But when I was writing the book, because I've never been to Egypt, but I've always loved it. Always, anything, again, any book here is about Egypt, I wanna read it. And I want to go there, and I'm going to watch even the cheesiest mummy movies just so that I can, be in a catacomb hall with, a torch. But when I was writing the book, I actually went on YouTube and did YouTube tours of, in particular, any site they were going to be at. And there are reconstructions of the Library of Alexandria that you can watch on YouTube. This is what we think it looked like. This is how it was set above the harbor. This is where the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid, and this is how it was all laid out. And and it like rises, like they show you the what it looks like now, and then they'll draw in what it looked like then. And then Thebes, and the temple and the palace in Thebes, which are very important in book 2 and 3. I did that. So I'm glad, I was like, I have no other choice, but thank goodness for YouTube. I got to tour these things before COVID made touring online a thing. So I appreciated that work that people just do, and it's out there for you to enjoy. But I do want to go.
It's something, there's something that about it that I even in your books, in your physical books, you provide a very simple map. But I found myself, I'm just that type of reader that when in the chapters, when you're describing the journeys that need to occur, like we're traveling from here to here, it takes a certain amount of time, or we have to wait till this season of the flood finishes. Like that's all stuff I know. Like my family would talk about, oh, we traveled here because when that happens, you've got to move. Yeah, you've got to go there.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I would always refer back to the map. We were talking earlier about how I'm visual. So like when you would have those chapters talking about place, I would have a paperclip in the book and just go back it and just go, I'm going to go on the back journey. And then I come back into the words. Even when I was recording it, I attempted in the recording, sometimes, I don't know if people picked up on it, when you were talking about some of the journeys, or if you were talking about the river, I tried to sway in my voice or do something like that to create a sense of place as best I could with my voice. But it definitely is, it's, I don't know if it's incorrect to say it or not, but I just remember growing up and learning about it and just really hearing the term like melting pot. It's a place of varied cultures because of the river. And how people need to travel and trade and mix and communicate. And the joy of that, I find in reading it, is they're just, different names, different, there's a wondrous variety that you can capture in your stories of the many cultures that exist in the same place and how they're navigating together of power.
Yeah. And how does that work? Because it's always been that way on a certain level. I mean, on one hand, ancient Egyptians tended to be what you would call isolationists in a certain level, but they were always cosmopolitan because of the river. Like even when Herodotus was doing his histories in 400 BCE, when he got there were already merchants of speaking several different languages and set up, because everyone is traveling up and down there. The ancient Egyptian kings themselves had no need to really go out and make a bigger territory, because you've got everything you need right there except wood and gold. And so you have Nubia to the south for your gold, and then you go get your cypress trees from the north. And if you can't do that with negotiations and trade, then you go in with troops. But otherwise, it was really about the trade going back and forth. And there was a huge, merchant, cosmopolitan, ethnically different class already there in ancient times, already happening during the height of the Greek Empire, even. So it's because of the river. And the other thing about the river that's so interesting is Upper Egypt on that map is the lower part the southern part. Southern Egypt is Upper Egypt, and northern Egypt is Lower Egypt, because the river flows from the inland down towards the Mediterranean. So the flow is going out to the Med instead of in. And so often when I was writing, I'd be like, and then they were sailing downstream. It's like, no, they're going up. They're, like they're in, and that's different. And you go down, and that's how the inundation would happen. The rains interior Africa would just slam and flood. And they had the story of Isis's tears being, she's crying, she's mourning the loss of Osiris. At this moment in time, and that's what the inundation is. So there was just this life in the river, and the river itself was a god, plus it had many gods that lived in it, and the pantheon, and each nome has its own relationship with the river, but the river is everything. A reader commented that she would like to go to Egypt, absolutely, but she had two interesting things on there, because I had asked if you've gone on tours. And my aunt actually told me, she sent me a message saying she has gone to Egypt, and I knew this, but she took a boat tour with a local, and she down the Nile. And while the Nile itself in ancient days, undammed, is a very different being than the Nile now, which is actually running out of water, due to all sorts of things, but she still really, really enjoyed it. But you have a lot of locks, a lot of dams, and a lot of stops in there. And then something that the reader suggests is that she would love to go with a tour group where that ancient spirituality and practices, particularly the temple of Isis or Horus or any of those sorts of things, is woven in, is a part of it. And I thought that would be interesting too. I know that there are spiritual tours are a thing now all over the world. And so that would be a really neat, I would agree that would be a really neat angle to include along with the development of the culture, because they were very bound together. The belief in what the gods and their purpose, and nature, and in their case, the desert and the Nile. These are two huge forces that they navigate. And then of course, your practices of life from that. So I would like that too. I think I agree with that reader. I would like a tour of the temple that really brought you back to that place where Ankh-Makis and Natasa were.
I think being in the presence, whether you're touching or receiving the elements, there are some people that are connected to land or to water or to heat or to air or just a spirituality. I think that some people are connected in different ways. And I know for me, there is a pull to hopefully one day go. And at this point in my life, I think just going would be the joy, whatever I get to do.
Whatever you get, I agree.
Yeah. So,
I agree.
So that's really great. I'm really excited to hear of people's connection to place. And you definitely wove that into the stories for sure.
Yeah, well, I had read by an archaeologist, and I can't remember which one, but he had mentioned that people and cultures are of their land, and that the drive to create monuments in a place where you have the flats, like, and sort of thing coming in all directions it happens out of that relationship with where you're at. And Natasa's people were monument makers, and they were river people, and they were very different than the Greeks that are high seas and island people, right? It's a very different kind of thing. And there's that clash of cultures in this story because of the fact they're trying to overthrow a Macedonian empire that shouldn't even really be ruling, right? But they are two different cultures from the land point, even though the Ptolemies have been there for many generations, 8, I think at this point, but several hundred years. There's, there's still a draw to what they are. They are ocean people. They are the Mare Nostrum people, and the Egyptians are the river people. And I definitely play with that, with Natasa not wanting to leave, but having to leave, having to be exiled from Egypt, and having to go elsewhere. Her meeting people of the trees, people of the forest. It's a very different people. And so I hope in Civilization's End that comes up you haven't read it yet, but when you read it, there's definitely, she's always going to want to go home, but there's a new type of people to learn to love and know, the people of the forest. And that was very exciting to bring the land and nature into the way they interact with one another. So I look forward to you reading that so that you can then narrate that.
Me too. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.